Hi, this is the Drupal usability meeting for April 23rd, 2019. And we have a few topics lined up for today. We'll start with Lucas on automated updates UI.
Great. Let me do a screen share if that helps. I think it does.
Yeah, it always does.
Here we go. So there are 2 or 3 different screens that I want to walk through with automatic updates, but let me just, for the sake of recording, perhaps do a 30-second intro to what automatic updates is. It's an initiative that is needed for being able to alert and then automatically apply updates to Drupal core and eventually contrib modules. One of the first milestones was to be able to do public service announcements for when highly critical updates have been identified to be soon released. So a couple days before, a core update similar to Drupal is about to come out. We can post to a feed that, hey, something is about to happen here and be ready. Followed on with some of the other stuff that we'll talk about in the next couple of minutes. There's also some readiness checks that happen as well. So if you've got a site that is not ready and a PSA comes out, get yourself ready as quickly as possible because you might need to quickly thwart a 0-day vulnerability. It's sort of the idea. So without any more background, this is what we have for a PSA. We have insight messaging, which is here. The wording here, I'm not so worried about from a UX perspective for the wording because this right here, at least, comes from the feed. We could discuss the prefix. I just threw something in for now. Also, don't get hung up on the fact that the word contrib and then the word standard, contrib, and then something that's in core is showing up here. This is just for test coverage. I have to be able to do all of this with core install profiles and themes. And I faked it out for test data purposes to show that standard is a contrib install profile and 7 is a contrib theme. So imagine this were Bootstrap or Lightning, for example, and you'll get a better picture. So wording on here, perhaps wording here, but not, I mean, this is an admin screen, so we don't need to belabor that. Let's see what else. The other things I would like input on are, so we've got insight messaging at the top of the page for PSAs. We also were tasked to make sure we had something on the status report page, so we do. We say 3 urgent announcements and links. And now we're sort of dipping into the next thing that I want to discuss. So before we get to that, why don't we stop there? And I'm interested in feedback on this PSA part first.
So one thing that worried me a little when I looked at your screenshots was that those links didn't actually work, but I guess that's also because you're faking things with test data.
Correct. Right. We're still waiting. Michael Hesh should have the actual endpoints for this in the next week or two.
Okay.
So he's using this is pure test-driven development. He's going to use the format from our test module to build out the JSON feed. So the wording here is whatever comes through from the feed. This part here we could discuss. So let's do that. We have it here. We also have it here. Does this make sense? Do we want to change that? What do we want to change it to?
I would rather avoid I mean, I know the title is going to include PSA, but having something that's a human readable here, like Drupal core announcement or public announcement from Drupal core or something around that would be, I think, better than this is a lot of terminology here. It's like,
or if you are going to use the acronym, then you spell it out once, perhaps as a title on that error element, say public service announcements paren PSA close paren.
yeah,
So maybe
table.
maybe something like this.
Yeah.
So Drupal public service announcements :
Yeah, and then you just don't do the PSA in the individual items because they're the PSAs. So.
So then this right here, this prefix could go away.
Yeah, Drupal core or something.
Do we want to do core and contrib, or do we just use, whatever they put in the link text? So here we have standard, here we have 7. It could be lightning, it could be bootstrap, it could be core release.
Would removing some of like the term PSA, would that remove some context? Because if my understanding is correct, this message will display on other parts of the UI, like the available updates message does, where it displays across the admin UI.
So this right here, this messaging right here, is uniquely here. We have control over that.
Oh, so they'll just see on the other admin screens, you would just see something about like something in the status report that needs your attention, like you would with anything else.
Right.
Right.
So
okay.
this is,
yeah.
this is on any admin screen. We would paste that. Very similar. It's using the same exact logic that update module does when an update is available.
Okay, so you would see you wouldn't see that exact message with each PSA. You would just see the fact that there is something that needs your attention. You
would see so this text right here comes from the feed. We've been debating. I think it sounds like we want to get rid of this part and prefix this whole thing with a prefix of Drupal public service announcements.
Yeah, I think that would make sense because also you avoid the term PSA, which could make sense to some people because it is generally an understood term, but you don't want to confuse anybody who doesn't know what PSA means. So.
Right. So it would be something like this. I'm going to quickly demo what we've discussed, if I may. So that would go there, and then we would also remove these things.
Should the first line then be in bold with maybe ability list, just to give it more attention as well?
Or... These are bulleted lists, right? Or they're lists right now.
Right. Just the way it displays.
Just how, okay. 7 theme displays. So, and if I take it a little further, there we go.
Yeah, I wonder if the first line should be bold where it says Drupal public service announcement, just so it, or even if that was some heading level.
We don't get as much flexibility around that with the messenger service.
Right. Yes. Okay. Of course.
I mean, I feel like we could do some of that, but I hesitate to do too much because of concerns of how a theme might print that if I put bold tags or strong tags around that.
So I have another question. The issue you mentioned earlier in Slack related to emails, and I was wondering why anyone would want emails sent from the site when they can just subscribe to the emails from the Drupal security site. But I guess one big advantage is that your site knows what modules are installed and might only notify you of contrib module PSAs when they apply to your site. Does that already work, or is it planned to work?
So that's the next thing to review. If we're done with the wording here, if we're okay with Drupal public service announcements, a series of links, and then on the status report page, 3 urgent announcements and a series of links.
The only other thing that I was going to maybe mention is that if you go back to the other screen.
Yes.
With one of the first checkbox there where it says insight messages or insight messaging, is that the term insight? Is that does that mean like on the non-admin part of the site?
This means Drupal set message.
Oh,
I hit save. I no longer get this still because I just hard coded it, but
yeah.
That enables or disables displaying PSAs. So the idea here is that there is a chance at some point in the future this will get into core. Which is why we're discussing it in this call today, because we only want to do this UX once. So if that's the case and they still have the contrib module installed, they would want to come in here and disable insight messaging.
Okay, so
then they would only get messaging from core. They wouldn't get emails or alerts twice on the page.
Okay, I think maybe some clarification there if it's not already there, because I was a little bit unclear as to what that would actually do, or if there's a difference between what it'll display in terms of core and contrib.
It doesn't do it. Yeah. How would you suggest that?
Yeah, I don't like the word enable because when you have a checkbox, you're always enabling or disabling something. So there's really not any information there. So I would say something like show public service announcements, PSAs, on admin pages.
Yeah, that works for me. I think there's potentially, I don't know exactly, but there may be other parts of core that we can pull wording from, like maybe with the maintenance mode, the way that the messaging is on that.
So this. Show public service announcements on admin pages. And send
Should public service announcements be camel case? Or should it not?
Good question.
It's a tough one, actually. Because what makes me think it should is because it's right next to PSA, which is capitalized, but then you would do that naturally anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah, for some reason, Drupal.org doesn't capitalize them. So if you go to drupal.org/security/PSA, there.
You would capitalize them if it's a proper noun, but it's not really a proper noun, perhaps, is the logic.
Okay.
So send email notifications when public service announcements for this site are posted. I'm not so happy about the are posted, but I do want to sort of clarify that it's not just for everything, it's for this site, and it's only going to do it when they're available.
Maybe I don't know if we need to then specifically say public service announcements. I think PSA might be fine for the email one because you're writing it above anyway. So we could, unless we want to display the full word, but we could just say PSA on that one, I think.
I would keep the whole thing because like people may also just skim options, or the form may
that's true.
or other modules may add more options here and other things like they could.
Yeah, that's her.
Is that good wording there? And should these be sentences with periods, or are they phrases without periods?
I would say sentences with periods. And are applicable is sort of awkward. When PSAs for this site are released.
Yeah, I think I prefer released and applicable. Or announced. No, that would. Yeah, I'm happy with released, I think.
Or you say send email notifications for public service announcements relating to this site or something.
Send email for
related
to this site. I like that.
They're released or posted or whatever. It doesn't matter. But the other option also only does the related to this site, right? So it's basically the same thing. It's showing the pages, and this one sends the emails.
Not to be pedantic, but so I apologize in advance. But do we want to specify installed versus not installed, or are we testing everything?
We test everything.
Okay, do we want to specify that we're testing everything?
That's why we say related to the site.
Right, but will we say all installed modules, or not installed, all modules related to this?
It's not even modules or extensions. Yeah. We can also do it for vendor libraries.
I would include a list of the types of things that we could go with, because related to the site is very ambiguous to me.
I don't agree with that. I mean, there should be a help page for this module that has details like that, and the interface text next to a checkbox should not be overwhelming.
I don't know, in all the years that I've been using Drupal, if I would have read help text for the module.
Yeah.
That's
with you there, buddy.
It just seems like an important distinction, because reading this, I wouldn't know what that meant. I get what it means, but as a site builder, that wouldn't be the first thing that would pop in my mind. I would have assumed that it meant installed stuff. And I might be annoyed at not having granularity because I'm getting sent things for anything in distribution, even if I haven't installed it.
Yeah, potentially you might want that's an important distinction, because I would assume that it would only be stuff that's installed, because generally Drupal doesn't kind of ignores everything that's not installed, in my experience. So it might be good to just clarify there and specify, even if it's just a short sentence, that this includes things that aren't installed, unless we want to give a little bit more granularity in saying, another checkbox that says, also include things which are not installed. And I suppose that would, my assumption is that would apply to emails and the PSA message up there.
Yeah, so that's my point as well, is that we basically describe the same thing twice. So the only difference between the two checkboxes is the first is show on admin pages and the other one is send emails. But the rest of what we are showing on admin pages or sending emails about is the same thing. Public service announcements related to this site, even for disabled components, it's the same thing for the two checkboxes.
Yeah. Actually, does it not, when you uncheck the admin page one, does it then not send you emails? Because I noticed the emails one disappears.
Huh?
So if you uncheck the PSA on admin page checkbox, it looked like, does the email checkbox disappear?
It does, and I probably need to think about that, but the idea is, yes, it did, because it was more of a show announcements, and the idea was if you don't show announcements, you want to not get emails as well, but I'm going to remove that.
Okay, yeah, because I think there's going to be someone that's not going to want them on the admin screen, but is going to want an email, potentially.
Yeah, that's fixed right now. So
So
I did add this, all public service announcements, check all code for the site, not just enabled extensions. That's not the right wording, but I think that's closer to what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
Right, and we can put more text in a paragraph than we can put next to a checkbox. So I think that's the right direction.
I can play
Okay.
around with that, and perhaps one of you will be so kind as to RTBC then once we have good wording for that prefix. For the sake of time, I did want to go to the next thing.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was waiting for someone to say that because I didn't want to cut off conversation. Update readiness check. So the other part of this is, as we're proceeding towards being able to automatically update, we want to also do some checks. Is the site a good candidate? Can we do this? So some of the things that fall into play here are, is the file system a read-only file system? Acquia and Pantheon and Platform SH are probably the three most popular Drupal hosting providers that don't provide you can't write to the file system. And if that's the case, we don't necessarily want to allow or there's file permission changes such that they can't, or there's disk space constraints, or a variety of things that could play. And we want to be able to communicate to folks, okay, there's a couple announcements. The next couple days you're going to have a release that's really important, but you're failing or you have not recently run a check on your site. If you haven't run the check recently, we can't really confirm that you're ready to rock and roll. So this is the wording that you get when you haven't recently run. It's, I believe, 12 hours or so that we kind of want to see this run. It's 10 or 24, so a reasonable amount of time. And if you haven't run the readiness check recently, we then give you a message. You can then run the check manually. If I run the check manually, well, this message goes away. So I'm not going to click that just yet. So does this for messaging here seem to make sense?
So I have two objections to this. The first is that you don't have any other errors except the ones you're currently thinking about. And so your two error messages are right next to each other. I'm worried that some site that might set up automatic updates would have 5 or 10 other error messages separating those two.
Very likely.
So these are ordered alphabetically, is that right?
I have no idea.
Is there a weight on error
No.
messages? No.
This is all from your .install file.
I think they're alphabetized, yeah.
So if they are alphabetized, then I think we should change that title so that they're likely to be next to each other.
Okay.
Could you call it something like Drupal PSA readiness check?
I don't like that because we don't need to be ready for the PSA. We need to be ready for the automated update. I would lead off with automatic or automated update.
I don't mind doing that. Eventually, some of this will go into core, and so some of it will be in core, and some of it will be in contrib. So we're not going to be able to play nicely with just the module name, because if the PSAs are in core, but automatic updates are still in contrib because of release cycles and core politics, PSAs are non-controversial, but doing an in-place update that's going to hose your site causes release managers to get twitchy. So there's an issue there. If we try to lump them together, I can't call it updates, or I can't call it automatic updates necessarily in core, even if it's in a module not called automatic updates, or maybe I want to. So with that information in mind, do you still think you want to lump them together, or do we want to have the individual messages uniquely self-contained enough that whether they're lumped together or moved around on the page, they still just make sense?
Okay, so I guess my second objection was sort of in that direction, that an update readiness check doesn't really convey to me what this is about. So you keep using the phrase readiness check, but you don't say what it's ready for. Well, ready for update. So if you want to make it more standalone so that it doesn't have to be next to the other one, then I would expand the second line of the second error message, and make it clearer that this is readiness for doing an automatic update of the code.
So this line here?
The line beneath that, I think, is what I had in mind, although either one is worthy of considering.
Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps you could just add run the readiness check manually to determine whether.
We also, interestingly enough, don't do anything like that at all for cron, and this is a copy of the cron messaging.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
This is a copy of the wording from cron.
Okay, your site has not recently run cron.
Yes. And we likewise don't give them any help on that. So just just keep that in mind.
Okay. Point taken.
Informs if a site is ready to run auto.
Yeah, maybe as a, well, not so much a follow-up, but as a, this being kind of an indicator that maybe we need to make the cron one also a bit more user-friendly.
Yeah. Checks. Let's make that a little better proper English. The readiness checks inform if a site is ready to run automatic updates. Does that get you what you need?
That's the right idea. I still don't like the wording.
Yeah, I'm not.
What if we did like? Keep going. I'm gonna start a demo here.
I was just gonna say I don't or I don't have a problem with the term update readiness check. Partly because I can't think of a better term that neatly summarizes what it's doing.
What if we do something like this? And this is a link to something on Drupal.org.
Yeah, I was actually.
Automatic updates are.
I was gonna suggest that actually because I thought a link might be useful.
Would that make Mr. Benji a little happier?
Well, previously we had the phrase readiness checks 3 times. Now we have the phrase readiness checks 4 times. I'm not sure that that's an improvement.
Well, let's take out some of them.
Yeah, I think if we can avoid repeating words, that's a good goal in general.
You can get it down to a single word check.
Yeah, you can just have your site has not recently run automatic update checks or automatic update readiness checks, and then make the automatic updates a link in that sentence, and then you can avoid the second sentence entirely.
Automatic update ready.
Or maybe make check a verb. Your site has not recently checked whether it is ready to run automatic updates.
I like that even better.
There's the phrase I couldn't think of. There we go.
I guess the verb run is sort of like the verb enable. Can often be
ready to
scratched out.
And what if I just do this?
We're going to combine those 2 sentences, I hope.
Not yet. I might. Your site ownership and
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, it's better than And the automatic updates could be the link, and then you can remove the second sentence.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
Yeah.
So something like. You remember hearing at one point that less is more when it comes to wording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
I think that's an improvement.
And is this okay?
I think so.
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Yeah, the not recently bothers me a bit, but I don't have. Ideally, we don't do. Yeah, I don't know. We would have not negative something, but we would explain what it is, but I don't have a better suggestion.
Well, could you put in the actual time that we're checking? Your site has not checked if it is ready to apply automatic updates in more than 12 hours.
I think it's then you are back at a long sentence that has data components and stuff, and it's hard to parse for a human. So I think it's nice here that the data component is separate. You don't need to parse it out of a long sentence. I think that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay,
It's much better than it was. So
thank you. So shall I run them now?
yeah. Also, I would make the whole sentence a link for random readiness check or checks manually, because manually as a link is not an action. Run is the action, but run would be too short, so you would link the whole thing. Like it's the usual click here thing.
If you're going to make it all one link, would it be better to say run manual readiness check?
I don't think so.
It's not.
The check is not manual. It's just the running that's manual.
True.
I might make run the readiness checks, the link, and then add the word manually outside the link. But if you want to have the whole sentence be a link, I guess that works too.
Well, I'm going to try Benji's suggestion first. Do we like that one? Or sit in the eye doctor's chair? Or do you like two?
I like Benji's.
Okay.
If it's been a long time since you haven't updated core or whatever, and you have instead of 3 urgent announcements, you have like 60.
I don't think that we will get that point because this is only going to be urgent ones. And I don't think in the last 4 or 5 years we've had maybe 3 Drupal-ageddons. And we've had very few contrib at all, if any, I would estimate.
But it's also moderately critical. So
That's just for testing, I think.
okay.
We're not doing all security announcements. These are just the public service announcements, the PSAs. And there are far fewer of those.
Okay.
I'm expecting
Okay,
to have at any point 1, 2, or possibly 3. Although perhaps someone will correct me and say the last security update with like link and all the other things that came out with contrib as well as core could have added 5 or 6 things on that list. But then that would have been 5 or 6 things along with 3 others previously. So what were you going with, Christina?
Yeah, it's my concern is having a super huge list here below the title X urgent announcements. So what I had in mind is something like a toggle or something like details or something like that. But if it's not going to happen, maybe it doesn't make sense.
I think it will be on a very small percentage of sites.
Okay.
And their whole, I would assume at that point, then their whole status report page is going to kind of look red as they scroll up and down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe instead of requiring, it should be require.
I'm fine with that.
I suppose on the Christina's point, I think that I would hope that the longer the list, the more urgency there would be to do something about it.
But there is the psychological problem that at some point the longer list makes you give up rather than
Yeah,
follow
that's
through
that
to
too.
action.
Yeah, you should see my reminders app sometimes. Very, very much aware of that psychological problem.
And we've talked about things like that in regards to the update module.
There we go. Does that help any? It makes it shorter, which is maybe better.
Always.
Okay, so the last piece, and then you can go on to your next item if you still had time, was the email that gets sent out. Is very, shall we say, sparse.
I would love to fix Drupal's core email parser.
So this is the messaging that gets sent out when you have these things. I would like some suggestions there. I'm also going to do this and see if here we go. Before we go to emails, let's finish up with readiness checks. So I'm doing the same thing here. One update readiness check is failing. Should I say fails?
Or failed.
Yes, past tense.
Failed.
Yeah, has failed, I think.
Because it already happened. It's not a continuous thing as we checked it one time, or the last time we checked. That's why it's failed.
Checks failed.
And can we strike the words update readiness?
I think so, because you've got it just to the left as well. It says update readiness checked.
Yeah. And in English, at least, we no longer have to worry about plural. One check failed, two checks failed.
I am doing Drupal plural or plural.
Right. So
it says one check failed or three checks failed.
Yeah. So what can a user do about this? That's the next question. It's like, great, you're telling me this is wrong. Now what can I do?
that's right. We need something actionable. So we need a link to a documentation page or internal documentation that explains what it means for the file system to be read-only and why that's a problem and so on.
So we could either put the word check as a link, update readiness checks as a link. Although if we do that, then we have to go back and take the link out of the your site has not recently checked if it's ready to apply automatic updates.
Would you not?
Go ahead.
Would you not want the link, a link for each item there? Because presumably the file system one would be different from the other ones you mentioned. Sorry, I can't remember what the other ones were.
Disk space, things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, we could put that. So put a link in sort of after this to address this, yada, yada.
Or even if it's a simple check, I don't know if we want to either a link or some very quick instruction if it's something that can be fixed. No, I doubt any of that could be fixed quickly. I'd say it. Probably a link, yeah.
Okay. I'll look at that. So then the next thing is, or the last thing, is that we have this little checkbox here to send email notifications. And that results then a nag email every 12 hours or so, 24 hours, with the list of of the Drupal PSAs requiring attention.
We have to give a little more context.
Absolutely. I was thinking that we could possibly link at this point over to a page.
You should also say where this email is coming from, what you have to do to turn it off so that people don't just block all emails from.
Yeah, can we draw inspiration from the other emails you might get from core, like the available updates email?
That one's not a good example, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Email should list, we want to say a link and description.
I mean, something that's functionally an unsubscribe link. You are receiving this because you are an administrator of the site such and such. You can turn off these emails by going to blah, blah, blah.
Can't necessarily assume that they're going to have access to do that.
Or contact the site administrator. There needs to be something along those lines.
Yeah, we need to give them some guidance in terms of what to do there.
And maybe put all of that near the bottom, and near the top where it says Drupal public service announcements, mention that these relate to your site with link.
Yeah, there's nothing in the subject or the email to tell you which site it is.
Well, there is in the email from.
Yeah.
I mean, site installs from Josh, but normally it would say, example.com or something.
Yeah, that's true.
But you can't count on people noticing or even being able to see the from address.
Sure, I can do it. These relate to your site. So we need to list these are related to your site, link in the description to a doc page. So a link with some description. So sorry, some description and a link of what a PSA is and what you should do. And what to do. And functionality of some type of an unsubscribe. I think I'm good. Any other input for me?
None from me.
Not for me either.
Nothing.
No, I think I'm happy.
Okay.
Exciting. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was really, really good that you were able to get that set up. Thanks.
Were we going to do the migration deletion or any of the others? I'm here for migration deletion if we wanted to talk that one.
Yeah, why not, since you're here?
So I saw it in the agenda. I'm still sharing, so let me look for it and bring up the issue. So migrations are usually a one-time thing for when you're upgrading, or a lot of times they are, but sometimes they are longer living, and folks do it as more like a feeds scenario. But
So for the purpose of the recording, we're talking about issue 2713327.
Correct.
Provide a way to remove migration tables, ID map, etc.
Okay. But in the case of an upgrade, we want to be able to figure out how to remove some of these mapping tables. Apparently, it's an issue on some shared hosting where they count how many tables you've got in your database. And so the sites need to be able to remove tables. You can do it using a drush command, but that's not good user experience. So what we want to do is provide a way to remove them through a user interface. So this is the wording. The picture here is not super big, but this is the wording. See if I can. Yeah, there we go.
There are some more recent screenshots near the bottom of the issue. I'm sharing one of them.
Oh, well, switch. You start screen sharing then.
We can both screen share, and everyone can decide which of us they want to look at.
Oh, well, I'm going to stop screen sharing. That's going to force everyone to look at you.
So I think this is the most recent screenshot of what the...
Sure.
You're not screen sharing, though.
I'm not? There we go. Now you can see it, can't you?
Hey, there we go.
Sorry. So I kind of wish there were more in the breadcrumbs. And also we've previously discussed sort of highly destructive actions, which this sort of counts as. And
there's an issue on that, and it hasn't really seen any forward progress. So
right,
I hesitate to append this or block it on that.
Oh no, but we can look at the discussion there. So that would be 2773205, and we usually have a button to do the action and a cancel button. And I think we discussed that at length. That there should be a cancel button. We shouldn't expect people to know how to use their browser back button. And we might also want something more in the breadcrumb, but I would follow the pattern from that issue and have a primary button rather than a red link, and also a cancel button. And we could wordsmith the text at the top.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think we also need to make it very explicit that this is absolutely not reversible. Maybe would you do another confirm form after you click the button like you would have with when you're deleting an entity?
I believe that there is one.
Okay. There we go. Yes. Yeah, we might want to make it be explicitly clear that this is not reversible at all.
And do we have to list zeros for all of these things that aren't being deleted, or is that just an implementation thing that hasn't been worked out yet?
I think that's his implementation. It needs to be worked.
So we can pretend those aren't there.
So we'll make it explicit. Confirm page.
Should it be a alert message that, like a warning alert that's displayed? Because that will definitely draw people's attention to.
No, it'll get them. They'll get alert fatigue.
That's true.
And we should follow the usual pattern of loading a page, not an alert. I guess again, this issue has sort of a warning message box. I think that was
yeah, that was the one I was referring to. Was that example? Yeah, not an actual browser alert. It's the because the styling term for those is an alert. So that's the class, I think.
So I wrote some notes. There should be a cancel and a delete button.
I'm guessing that on the confirm screen, the idea is that it would display the exact same text that's on the table that's being shown right now. Because it looked like it just displayed the table name and not like the description like we're seeing right now as well.
Right, and it says the following migrations will be deleted. I think that's much less clear than migration tables.
Oh yeah, yeah. We probably want something, again, to be very clear.
So would you just repeat pretty much the same text that's on the previous screen?
I think that might be, I don't know if you'd want all of it, but certainly you just want it, well.
Do we want to use the word deleted, dropped, removed? How do we want to standardize on that?
Well,
that's already been discussed on the issue, hasn't it?
Has it? Okay. I thought it had, but. So if we said migration database mapping tables related to the following migrations will be deleted, would that work?
Could you say that again? Just a lot of words all at once.
Migration database tables related to the following migrations will be deleted.
You don't have to say migration twice. Database tables relating to the following migrations.
Perfect. So database tables related to the following migrations will be deleted. This is a process that is not reversible.
Where do you plan to place all these text you just mentioned? On the bottom? Sorry, I might have missed a part of the sentence.
I think we're talking about adding or replacing the text on the confirmation page.
I thought you were saying the button, and it was like, what?
Would be one big button.
Yeah.
And would we want to put the would we want to then put the message that says this, or the text that says this cannot be undone, or whatever we go with it within the paragraph there, or do we want to have that as a separate orange looking alert box above it or below it, like a warning, like on like there?
Good question. Do we have this pattern somewhere else apart from here?
Yeah, so on the module uninstall screen that's being on there.
Are we sure that's on there, or this is just a mock-up?
This is a mock-up we're looking at.
Oh, it is?
I don't think that's been implemented, although Jacob does a lot of stuff like that in the web form module. but I don't think we have this design in core anywhere.
Yeah.
And now that I look at it, I realize I was saying earlier that the link to uninstall should have the uninstall and the cancel, but I was wrong. It's the this is the pattern for the confirmation page.
So, yeah, both of them, I guess, are okay.
So we'll do some wordsmithing. Benji, would you be willing to come back through in maybe a week or so once we get that wording in there to just do a quick review of the wording at the tops of these 2 pages?
Sure.
Okay. Are there other points of feedback here?
Presumably that checkbox at the top would select all. Names.
I believe so.
Yeah, I like that you have the machine names as well as the labels, because that's the best way to be unambiguous.
I'm going to make sure we have test coverage for that. I'm not sure that we require a label, and so I want to make sure that we gracefully fall back on just the ID.
It's an odd choice of an example for the screenshot that you've checked off one of the feeds, because presumably the feeds are the last things that you would want to clean up.
Yeah. So good. We'll need to make sure we have a test for that. I think I'm good. I'll put some comments in there, and we actually do have a cancel and delete button at seam on the confirm page.
Right.
So the other page, do we need to change that from a link text to a normal submit button? It feels a little bit more like a secondary rather than primary right now.
So on the module uninstall screen, I was just I was looking at it. That that uses a button but not a primary button. When you're in the select list, but like with this example, when you go to the confirm page, it has a primary button to uninstall and then a non-primary button to cancel. And the uninstall screen itself doesn't have a cancel button.
Yeah, I would follow that pattern.
What style of button would we prefer? Secondary?
Yes, I guess that's what this is, a secondary button.
Yeah, for that, yeah.
Which one are you referring to?
So for the first page, where you choose which migrations you're going to uninstall tables for, we're discussing what style this should be. And instead of a link, it should be a button because we're submitting a form.
Yeah.
And I'm suggesting that we follow the same pattern as on the uninstall modules page.
But it's a primary action on that page. So I think it should be primary button.
Okay.
Unless there's any other action like cancel or something like that.
There isn't.
So
at one point, I think there was some feedback, and then I don't see this was updated in the screenshots you've got there. It was changed from a danger style, button style, to a primary. So it's already delete migration tables is now a button.
Okay.
Screenshot's not updated for that. Do we want to just say delete tables?
Yes.
If it makes sense, the shorter the better. If it still makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'll take that back.
There's no more feedback from me. Anybody else has other ideas here?
I don't. I think it needs some wordsmithing.
I think we can do that offline.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
then. It's almost time. Well, it's past the time, so I think I'm gonna drop off here. So thank you all for the meeting and the issues you bring. See you next week then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.